and thanks for putting on a great conference yet again with awesome entrepreneurs. That was some great stories from Hotel tonight about focus that I think everyone should learn from. So, how's everyone out there? Are you awake? Are you ready? This is a lot of fun. This is about finding the lighter side of some amazing people that are doing some stuff in the Silicon Valley / San Francisco area. Both entrepreneurs, investors, and the enablers that we're going to bring up on stage. So this is a very loose format. It's about getting to know them as human beings and hopefully also getting something there that you guys could use as entrepreneurs. We'll bring each person up here, and as the second person comes, the third person, those people stay so that they can comment, similar to a late night format. So without further ado, we have the first person, Mr. Ted Wang, coming up. Ted, first of all, you look buff.
Yeah,
What's your secret?
I started smoking, and it's been just really good on the whole weight thing. And it's like, that, and a lot of the Dexatrim. It's been really working for me. Thanks.
Okay.
Can I sit, or do
Drugs?
I have to?
No, you can sit down. Please do.
Okay, yeah.
So Ted, for those who don't know, I started a new company after doing 7 years of venture capital, and before that I started a company called Snapfish, and he was the first person I called. And he helped me form the company. He's helped me with some of the tough decisions that we went through. And I always thought it would be a lot easier the second time around, and there were always something gnarly that I didn't expect that Ted knows we went through for a couple months. So he is kind of the lawyer extraordinaire, the legal wizard of Silicon Valley. Some of his companies that he's been representing are Facebook, Twitter, Dropbox, Pinterest. Did I miss something there? Big? I'm sure I did.
Your company is the most important. Most importantly.
Mine's still in stealth. So anyway, so he has been really, really beneficial, I think, and he is like, what you want out of legal counsel, and I'm going to say this because he probably won't say it, is not legal counsel. What you want is strategic counsel. What you want is someone who can really be on your side, and when you have a tough decision, usually the legal elements are mixed in. If it's just a lawyer, they're paid to show you the risks, and that's not helping you make a decision. What Ted does is actually put himself in your position and help you figure out what to do after he helps you understand what the risks are. So Ted, but we're not going to wax on about your lawyering. What we're going to talk about is everyone starts from small beginnings. And you weren't always the kingpin legal dude of Silicon Valley. How did it start? Give us an interesting story there.
Yeah, thanks. I had some humble beginnings as an attorney. I started actually with a nice firm. I started with Gunderson Datmer, which is a great firm down in Menlo Park, and then I decided I had the genius idea that I was going to go set off on my own. And my first office was in Palo Alto, right next door to Gordon Biersch, where that is, and I was looking for an office, and I really just wanted to get the cheapest office I could find because I figured, I'm just doing all this work remotely, and the clients will never want to come in and see me. So, I got this little place, and it was above a life insurance sales place. Now it's kind of, the building kind of got fancied up, but at the time there was this guy, Lee Aldinger Life Insurance, and he was selling insurance products downstairs, and he was also my landlord. And I got a one-room suite in an office that was upstairs. And I used to get in pretty early in the morning. I'm an early riser, and one day I came in there, and there was this guy, and he was walking around in his pajamas. And I was kind of like, that's kind of weird. And then I kind of noticed that, maybe I thought he was, meditating or doing some yoga in the morning. I don't really know. And then I kind of started to smell like, I think he's cooking himself some dinner in here. And what I figured out was, this place was not only the cheapest office space, but it was actually the cheapest place you could live in Palo Alto. And this dude was just living in the office and this little room. So that was where it all started. I started out with 2 clients. And everything kind of grew from there. So I think that was a great experience for me too, because it informed me about what an entrepreneur's life is like. And I think, Raj, to your point, it's easy to give advice. It's easy just to kind of sit in your nice, cozy office and say, well, here are the 7 different choices that you have. But I think having had to, make ends meet and figure out how to build a business by myself and how to pay the bills and buy the copiers and hire the assistants and all this other stuff. You kind of learned about the urgency and the day-to-day existence of a startup, and that's was really helpful for me.
Awesome. So tell us, you're working with all these awesome companies. Entrepreneurs out here, I'm sure all of you can kind of relate to this, but you have to do some crazy shit to get noticed or to really make it happen. It doesn't just come to you. So, let's take a company like Facebook. Like, how'd you do it? Like, how did you get involved with them? The guy was kind of, pretty well known at that time even. What's the story?
Yeah, that's a good one. I like the Facebook story. So wait, let me ask a question. Is Anthony Suhu in this audience? Okay, that's good. Because, so I represented this company called DotSpotter, and it was a really crappy company. Anthony was the founder, so I just didn't want to say it if he was here. And so he had this advisor meeting, and that advisor meeting was in Berkeley. And my office is down in Mountain View. And if you're based in Mountain View, Berkeley might as well be like Berkeley, France. I mean, it's 6,000 miles away, right? And the meeting was at 11 o'clock, and I had 62 other things I needed to do that day, and I really didn't feel like going. I was like, should I bag out? I was like, I told him I was going to go. Okay, I'm going to go. And so I went to this advisor meeting, and that was where I met a guy named Gideon Yu, who is now the president of the 49ers and was also the CFO of Facebook, who eventually hired me to be Facebook's lawyer. And the kind of lesson that I learned about that is, when you're doing networking opportunities, it's always the best ones. The quality of the opportunity is usually directly related to how painful the networking activity is. It's the stuff that you really don't feel like doing tends to really pan out the best. And it was just a series of really miraculous things that occurred that led me to become Facebook's lawyer. But I took away that one lesson from that.
So find the shittiest networking events you can and attend them, is what you're saying.
It
clearly doesn't apply to this one, but we're talking about.
It's not the event. It's just it's when it's Tuesday night, or you'd rather go home, or it's you'd rather be doing something else, and you're just feeling that acutely when you're driving there. That means it's going to be a good one.
All right, next we have Mr. Phil Kaplan. Come on up. Phil is someone I've known for a long time. I was trying to think of the word to describe Phil, and the only thing I can think of is weird. In a very loving way, because I know him very well. Phil is a coder. He's a professional blogger. When the early .com boom started to go down, everyone was kind of saying how everything is so cool. You go to a party and be like, how's your company doing? And they'd be like, oh man, it's going great. It's fucking awesome. And the reality was, no one was awesome. Everything sucked. And so Phil kind of wanted to expose that and start a company called fuckcompany.com, where he talked about all the companies that were fucked. And it was quite amusing, and it ended up being my source of news probably every day as I was an entrepreneur. Maybe because deep down inside, I was like, ha ha ha, I don't suck as much as you do on Fuck Company. But in any case, it was quite interesting, and it grew. And he had 4 million daily readers. And then he realized that he wanted to go start some other companies. So he started AdBright and Blippy and raised $50 million and did all this shit, and it was cool. But what I think is most cool about him, aside from being the drummer in our band, which you'll hear him tomorrow, or no, tonight, sorry, tonight, is that he has launched over 40 different apps or businesses, and guess how many employees he usually has? 0, just himself. And he sold a few of them and made some money. So, I want to know, what do you love about being the one-man show, and what sucks about it?
My biggest company was AdBright, and I was CEO and had 150 employees. As far as the biggest staff. After that, I did a few things where I had fewer people. The thing that when you're really an entrepreneur, part of the reason why people become entrepreneurs is because you want to work for yourself, and you want to be your own boss, and you want to be able to wake up whenever you want, and you want to just sort of have your own, call the shots yourself. But the truth is, the more people you hire, and the more investors you have, and the more the more you have to manage and all that kind of thing, you really don't feel like you're the boss anymore, and you get super stressed out. And so the last few companies I've had, I've tried to minimize the number of people to zero now. Yeah, but I have like some designers I work with who are remote, and I use Odesk a lot, which is amazing, by the way, if you guys don't use it, for hiring, like, for somebody to do customer service or do certain tasks for, like, just a few bucks an hour. I use a bunch of those different services.
And how did you, so this latest one is Vandalism, which is probably the largest social network for musicians.
Yeah.
How many people are on it?
So, Vandalism is a social network for musicians, like guitarists and drummers and stuff, to meet other musicians. About 10% of people are musicians. And there's 600,000 members on Vandalism right now.
What I don't understand is, why haven't you upgraded your band yet? There's so many people on there that are better than us.
Oh. This band's pretty good. You'll see in about a half hour.
Right. Thank you, Phil.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add?
Well, and I recently launched it. I mean, this isn't a commercial for all the shit I launched. I will tell it.
It isn't, so don't do that
right,
shit.
No. That's all boring. But there is a good entrepreneur story. Right. Ted told a good story. A quick story is my father is an entrepreneur, lifelong entrepreneur in the taxi business, and my mom is a lawyer. And the first time I was a freelance programmer for a long time, and one of the first big contracts I had was a $300,000 contract. It was during the .com, boom days, and I had a few employees, and the client wanted to pay $300,000, and usually most of my deals were handshakes, but for that one they wanted me to sign a contract. So I gave the contract to my mother, who's a lawyer, and she redlined the hell out of it, made a ton of changes, and went back to the client and back to my mom and back and forth forever, over probably a month. And eventually the client said, "I can't do this anymore, I'm out." And I don't know, I'm sure she's a great lawyer, but also it's like I'm her son, so she wanted everything to be like buttoned up and perfect. So I was bummed the contract went away, but then another client came, and it was a $400,000 client, and I was really excited about this one. And they also gave me a contract they wanted to sign. And instead of giving it to my mother, the lawyer, I gave the contract to my dad, who's an entrepreneur. And he said, "Just sign it." And I said, "But it has all this stuff. It says I'm personally liable if I deliver late. It says I owe them money if I'm late, and I'm responsible if anything goes wrong, and all these things." And my dad said, "Well, what you do is you sign the contract, you get the money, and then if any of those things happen, you tell them, 'Fucking sue me.'"
It's funny because that's the same advice Ted gave me when we were doing our deal. So he's more like your dad than your mom.
So now I'm a little loose with the signatures here and there, to probably Ted's dismay, and we have worked together, Ted and I. So there's that.
Awesome, dude. All right, well, I want to bring up the next person who's also in our band, just by coincidence, Mr. Christian Segar. So Christian is not only a guy from Finland, which is impressive in and of itself, but he used to play for money on the streets in Finland. That's why he's a killer keyboardist, as you'll see later on. And he raised a lot of money that way, but not enough to start his first company, probably, right? So, Christian, you love music, and sometimes you get a little bit obsessed with details. He started a company called Playfish, which he sold to EA for about $400 million. And I remember meeting him when I was a venture capitalist and stupidly passed. I'm not sure he would have taken my money, but I love to say that I passed first. And the guy was just obsessed with every detail. And so tell us a story about your obsession with detail. Does it work all the time? What's going on?
Yeah, so I'm a product guy. So when I grew up, I loved games from when I was literally yay high. And I was always into detail, to be honest. I think the tiny little pixels matter everywhere. The sounds matter. Everything matters in games. Because at the end of the day, it really genuinely is an art. It's not a science. It's about the feeling that you try to convey through games. And for me, maybe one, like when I started my first company, a mobile games company that's actually today called Glue Mobile, was formed between a merger of my company back then called Macrospace and a company out that was based out of London, and a company out here called Sorrent. We combined them, called it Glue Mobile, and we IPO'd 6 years later, which is great. But when I started building my first games, I knew nothing about running a company. I didn't know anything about any of that stuff, but I loved making games. So what I did was Actually, for the very first games we did, I did all the pixel graphics, I did all the sounds, I did all the all the writing for it, all that stuff, which is, I wasn't good at any of it, but I wanted to do it because it was important. Spent a lot of time on it. But even still in the last quarter before the IPO, up to that point, I gave up drawing and I gave up writing because I was not that good at it, to be honest. But I kept sound, so I did every single soundtrack, I did every single piece of effects to all the games, literally until the quarter before the IPO, which meant I did all my CEO job and my CEO job and all that. I did sort of during the day till late evening, and then at night I'd sit there, wheel out my keyboard and start, tweaking the sounds to the games until they sounded perfect, which is fun. And I sort of, the fun bit about that is that my stuff was at one point on something like 80 or 90 million phones out there, so I felt I was like a multi-platinum selling MIDI artist.
It's a little more than cover flow, right?
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, yeah, detail does matter.
Interesting. So what is the piece of advice you have as an entrepreneur? And by the way, he's not just an entrepreneur. So he also then made some angel investments, and I wish I had his track record. What was this little company that you invested in out of Finland too? Supercell?
Yeah. So I actually led together with my Playfish co-founders. We found this wonderful team we loved out of Finland called Supercell that are now the biggest iOS games company in the world. They have the number 1 and number 3 game globally on iOS. They released their first quarter calendar year results, where they in the first quarter this year made about, I think, 190 million in revenue, 105 million in profit in the first quarter. So they make with 100 people, right? So they are this amazing company that I wish I could take some credit for, other than just having
other than being chairman and the earliest investor. Yeah. So tell me, I mean, like most people don't have that track record. What is the kind of the secret to picking? How do you know how to pick really well? What's the thing you're looking for? And this is more, I guess, if there were VCs or angel investors in here, I want to know.
So I actually think it's the same thing, because at the end of the day, I find that both seed investment and being an entrepreneur, like 99% is about recruitment. It's about the people. It's about figuring out who do you end up working with, one way or the other. And what I've always looked for, and what I really enjoy, has been finding people who genuinely love the craft of making what they're making. So they've been good at it for a long time.
Artisans.
They are artisans. They are literally handcrafters of.
Ted, are you an artisan when it comes to law?
It's fun, but I can identify with things. I'm kind of obsessed with my little legal docs. Like I have the open source docs, and I spend time on them. Like I think it's a good point. I think if the real question is like, would they do it for free if you didn't pay them? And
that's a good test.
It's super embarrassing to admit that that's kind of what I do in my spare time.
And what Phil does all the time because no one pays him.
Yeah, I do it for free a lot. Awesome. Unfortunately, but sometimes not.
Well, let's keep rolling here. Next, we have the entrepreneur that I met at his kitchen table when he just started out, and then later on sold that company for $300 million. Mr. Dave Samuel, come on up here. Hey. Dave started a company that was affectionately called The DJ, and then it turned into Spinner, and then he started Grouper. And now you've decided to go to the dark side as people like me go to the light side. So what the hell, Dave? Why did you go to the other side? Entrepreneurship is so much fun.
I miss being an entrepreneur, but my view with starting Freestyle is I'm kind of being an entrepreneur again. I really see Freestyle, which is a seed stage startup, as a startup itself. So I've been working with my business partner who I think is just one theme that I bring up as you talk about co-founding teams. Basically, I've been working with the same guy named Josh Felser for about 15 years, and we did Spinner and Grouper, and now we've started Freestyle. And we're trying to do things a little bit out of the box. We try to do things a little bit entrepreneurial. But it's
so one thing that I've noticed out of the box is that you and Josh like to go to Burning Man a lot. Yes. I didn't see the naked pictures yet, but does shit like that really help you too, or is it just a way to have fun?
I think it's surprising how many techies are actually at Burning Man, and for those who haven't experienced it, I really think it's a great creative place to go.
Do you remember any of it?
I do remember it. I think Josh has been 13 times. I've only been 5. So why do I go? I think one kind of weird but very nice thing is it's offline. So basically, your phone and you're unconnected, and so that's pretty nice for coming from the technical side of being unconnected. And And then there's just so much creativity there that you can kind of come up with, I think, good ideas there.
So, speaking of creativity, he's doing great on freestyle, and you are kind of being very different and bucking the trend of the typical angel investors out there, because you guys are deep. But speaking of creativity, somehow you got an obsession and a fascination with toilets. Tell us about that.
That's correct.
Why did you fall in love with the toilet, and what have you done about it?
Well, back in 2000, 2001, when I was reading Fucked Company every day.
So it's all about Phil. It all goes back to Phil.
And I was a Giants fan, and sadly I'm still playing Clash of Clans too much today, but that's jumping to today, so I am connected to everybody here. But basically back in 2000, when it was not cool to be a .comer, I said, well, what would be something different? And selling high-tech toilet seats is definitely pretty different. And so basically I started a company called Brondell. Mark Cuban, that I knew from broadcast.com days, who's now I think on Shark Tank and other things. He and I led the Series A for Brondell, and we sell high-tech toilet seats. And a high-tech toilet seat is similar to a Toto washlet. The crazy thing is for many years, Brondell was kind of doing relatively flat for 8 years, but within the last 2, we've doubled revenue the last 2 years. So we went from 4, and this year we're going to do 8. Hopefully next year we're going to do 16. So it took a while.
What's the value prop that worked? Tell us about the secret behind the toilet.
Well, I think that
what are people looking
the
for?
the product is now available in Home Depot, and that's the main thing that has allowed our revenue to ramp. And so, the value prop is that I am confident as an entrepreneur that this product will be standard within every household in America. If you go to Japan, you cannot not sit on a heated seat that has a bunch of high-tech features in it. So I think that comfort is going to happen in America. The housing crisis of '08 was not helpful for Brondell, but now that we're in Home Depot, we're going to be in Lowe's, we're starting to roll out in these other places. We've managed to, timing is a huge part of a startup, and if you can kind of weather the storm and still have cash to make it there when you think the timing's going to work out. It seems good right now for Brondell, so hopefully we've weathered the storm. We're going to come out, bright and clean on the other side.
Yeah, look, no pun intended, but it takes a lot of balls to get into the toilet business. And,
yes.
I think it's pretty, you talked to me about this a couple years ago. What the hell are you doing?
We're number 1 in the number 2 business.
Yeah, it's pretty. I like that one. All right, we're going to move to the next one. Finally, we have coming up on stage here, Mr. Ben Ling. Somehow, Mr. Ben has been a part of every major company in Silicon Valley. Google, many years. Facebook. Baidu, maybe not the most major company, but a very interesting company. And I'm sure there's stories there that you may or may not tell us about. And now you've decided to go to the dark side, one of those few people that found that love in the dark side, Khosla Ventures. So tell us a little bit. First of all, you're also a pretty buff guy. You're wearing the jacket on purpose so that I can't really look at it. But I remember sitting across from you at a pitch, and I'm running a fitness company, and saying, man, that guy's fucking buff. So you didn't always start that way. So tell me about your kind of metamorphosis as a physical human being.
Yeah, so the metamorphosis
No,
as
Phil,
a
sorry, it
human
doesn't
being.
work.
Well, I guess when I was younger, I was really skinny. And as we discussed, in college, I decided that it was just time to change. And so growing up, I was a nerd and, your typical math, science geek. And so in college, I ended up taking up resistance training at Berkeley. I got units for it. Took 2 classes.
Got paid to get buff.
Basically, I paid to get the education to get buff. And then since then, I've gone to the gym pretty much an hour every day for the last 16 years. Put on about 50 pounds of muscle. So I was about 113 pounds then. I'm about 160 pounds now.
So are most people interested in how you gain 50 pounds or how you lose 50 pounds? Just raise your hands. Okay, sorry, man. That's just not interesting to us.
Yeah, I know. But the thing here is that I think it's relevant to startups because I think there's some things in life that you can hack. And I don't think fitness is one of those things that you can hack in life. It's one of those things that you just have a lot of perseverance and you have discipline. And it's similar in startups. In startups, some things you can hack and other things you can't. Right? So in the sense of things that you can hack, you can probably hack together a prototype to get a proof of concept to test product market fit, but then you actually have to build the real product after that. Some things that you probably can hack for a short period of time, which aren't sustainable, are user acquisition techniques. You can spam your users, But at the end of the day, that's not a sustainable technique for building a business. So I think that there's some relevance here in thinking about when you start a company and when you're building a company, what things you can hack versus what things really require discipline and putting a lot of basically wood behind.
That's a very good point. So from the two investors here in the room, tell us what is the coolest startup that you've seen recently? Not the one that, well, they've had the right team and we think it's going to be a multi-billion-dollar company. More, it's just like you were just like, whoa, that is different. That is cool. What really inspired you?
Well, there's two. I mean, you know that I'm going to have to give the portfolio companies. So one
But it
of
better
them
be
that I'll
cool,
mention-
otherwise I'm going to cut it off.
Yeah, they're cool.
All right.
So one of them is called academia.edu. And the mission of the company is to make research available to everybody. So a lot of the scientific research today is locked behind basically paywalls. So you as a taxpayer pay for the scientific research, and then you're charged again to get access to it through some journals. And so Richard Price is the CEO, and we just funded their Series B. They're a social network that enables scientists to upload their papers and share content, and then basically go through the peer review process. And they're redefining the way research is done. So I think that they're basically opening up scientific research to the world, and I think that's very, very cool.
So let me be the skeptical VC for a moment, because I've never done that before.
Sure.
Ben, how the hell do they make money? It's a bunch of scientists.
I think that's a really good question, right?
Yeah.
So and one of the things at Khosla, how we're different than a lot of the other firms, is that we really believe in mission-based companies and companies that will change the world. And so this is like a company that can change the world and has a great mission and will help advance society. And with that thesis is if the company is successful in changing society and assembling the set of researchers, that there's lots and lots of ways to make money off of that. But you know, it's still early.
So Dave, it could be something you passed on, but what is that coolest? I know we know the toilet's cool, but what's the other cool company?
We've invested in a few companies that haven't launched, so I don't want to launch them here at Vator Splash. And so I'll talk about a pivot that actually, an investment that we did in May of 2011 that the team out of New York, we invested in a company called Veri, V-E-R-I, and it's a small team out of New York that came out of Techstars, New York. And their initial product did not work. About a year ago, when they had just probably a quarter of their cash left, they probably had only $250,000. They started working on a new product called Memoir, and Memoir just launched 2 weeks ago with iOS 7. And I think I would recommend downloading it, though they basically have had so many people install it that they kind of have a gate set up on people getting the product live. It's actually a pretty cool product that allows you to kind of understand what you've been doing in the past. It sounds very simple, but I find myself launching it and be like, oh yeah, wow, 2 years ago actually 2 years ago today, I was at Pasha, which is in the island in, what's the party island off Spain? I was at a bachelor party.
Ibiza.
I was at Ibiza 2 years ago, Pasha. And I mean, this is kind of like, why am I care about this? But there's kind of just like a memory lane
Memories.
that happens. What'd you say?
Memories.
Memories, yeah. And so I bring that up as an idea, and it's kind of a cool how you can have, a company that was initially going this way, it was not working. The team said, you know what, we're going to totally change directions. And we'll see. I mean, the product's just 2 weeks out of the gate, but it's actually a pretty cool product, and so I bring that up as an example.
Thank you. And Ted, you've got something on the tip of your tongue. What is it?
Oh, no. I actually was just thinking it'd be really demonic if he was just making all that story up, just to pitch the way.
All right. So, Christian, Phil, aside from what you told us, what is the one thing, the one mistake, and you didn't really talk about your mistakes, but what's the biggest fuck up that you did that you'd like to pass on that you think other people can learn from?
Well, for me, it was, so there was a company that's doing great now. Ted knows which company I'm going to talk about. But we started it with sort of the wrong premise, which was, it was a company called Blippy, which has since pivoted and is now doing something cool called Top Hatter. But that's not the point. The point is, we raised $12 million because we knew that we could. We had entrepreneurs who we knew anybody would invest in. We had we had an idea that was at the intersection of every hot thing that was happening. So it doesn't even matter what the company does, but it was in these, and it was like when Foursquare was just getting super hot, and Twitter was super hot, and Mint.com was super hot, and we were like the intersection of all these different companies, and we were like, we can just like, throw our business card like in the middle of, Sand Hill Road, and they're just gonna jump on it. And we did that, and they did. And then the point is, though, it turned, besides the fact that, the point is, it was not really a product that any of us really needed. It was not a product that any of us were really passionate about. And so we did it like, we raised the money, we had some like general sort of ideas, and then it became a real drudgery and a real bummer to sort of like try to build a thing that people would like. Rather than the opposite, what I do now is I think of a thing that I really want, and I build it, and now it's more of a slow burn, and I'm like, no, this thing that I'm building now is really fucking cool. It might only have a few users. Next year, hopefully it has 1 million users, because I want it for myself. So anyway, starting a company that was not a thing that I needed was a big problem.
About your passion. Christian?
Yeah, actually, I have a fairly similar story, actually, come to think of it. We had, when I started Playfish, I'd just come out of building a mobile games company over 6 years. I kind of felt like I'd sort of been there, done that in terms of creating games for fairly limited capability devices. What was exciting, and the reason we started Playfish, was because it felt like there was the market was changing, the world was changing, in that it was what Nintendo, if you still remember the Nintendo Wii, which feels like 100 years ago, but actually wasn't that long ago, back when it launched, and whenever it was, 2005, 2006. They'd shown the world that, you can sell an awful lot of gaming experiences, not by showing the resolution of the explosions, but rather showing the family playing together. And it's really fun to play with your friends. And on the other hand, there was Facebook and Ben and others who'd built these amazing sharing experiences online. So the dream behind Playfish was, hey, what if we were able to combine those two things and actually create games that bring people together online? Back when nobody was talking about social games. That was really exciting. So we set out to build really high quality gaming experiences, and we were incredibly lucky. The first product we made, called Who Has the Biggest Brain, was the first high quality production value game on Facebook at the time. Grew incredibly quickly, became the, I think, number 2, number 1 game globally very quickly. And we were, we thought, wow, that's incredible. We didn't know how to make money off it, but that was an incredible thing for us. So we went on to create 2 additional products that we were incredibly passionate about brain training, and because we'd created those types of games before and knew that sector. We then went on to effectively invent, if you like, the appointment gaming mechanic on Facebook through a game called Restaurant City and a game called Pet Society. We created them side by side. They went on to be the number 2 and the number 3 game on the platform. We had the top, 3 out of the top 5 on the platform. We thought we walked on water. We figured, these areas that we had been passionate about, we created products around what we were passionate around. We had, altogether at the time about 10 million daily actives and whatnot. Incredible, and plus an incredible hyper profitable business. All good. That moment in time, the fatal mistake at that moment in time, well, not fatal, but it was a mistake at the time that we wasted some time on, was that we figured, hey, we walk on water, we can make anything. Look, what are the other big segments in the market? Poker, there's a big poker game out there. Let's go and take it on. And went to a team and said, hey, how about making a poker game? And the team was like, not excited at all. We're like, no, come on, let's make it. It's going to be fun. It's going to be great. We can take these guys on. It'll be great. Team's like, okay, if you really want to, we'll try. Now, the trick is, if your team says that, don't go on and try and make the product, because it's totally and utterly pointless. So we went on to create a poker game that failed utterly and miserably and totally, because ultimately the team had no fundamental passion for it. The reason we made it was because we figured top-down category analysis. We're already in the pet gaming segment. We're in the appointment gaming, restaurant gaming segment. There was such a thing at one point in time, believe it or not. We're doing well on the brain training thing, but we don't have a poker game. Let's try and do that. So net, big lesson, especially in games where it's about creative as much as it's about passion and other things. Match the product and the project with the team and its passion, because otherwise things are not going to go
Similar
well.
like what Hotel Tonight was telling us, is like they're not doing hotel 3 days in advance, hotel 7 days in advance, or at least yet they're not, for that reason. Did you have something to add, Ben? Or
Yeah, so I've got a story for you, and it's a story about a startup. So I angel invested several years before joining KV, and recently an entrepreneur told me the following story, and I thought it was very illustrative and very helpful to share. So this entrepreneur raised his seed fund, or his seed round in 2010, 2011, raised about 1.5 million from really top-tier investors. It was more of a party round, but he raised from people who eventually became CEOs of public companies, were in senior operating roles at prominent startups and large companies that with growing divisions. So he had a really great sort of roster of investors. And in about 2011, we would get the investor emails of everything is going great. Here's like all the progress. We hired the following people, so on and so forth. And then, in later 2011, the emails sort of didn't come. And then in 2012, the emails didn't come either. And so, I sent him an email in 2012 saying, hey, just checking in, anything I can do to help. And basically he gave an update saying, we're going to close down shop. And then when I sat down and debriefed with him, he basically said, look, one of the mistakes that I made is I had all of these great people that I could have counted on as mentors, but what I didn't do is I didn't have an accountable investor. I didn't have somebody who was holding me accountable. And I made the mistake of thinking, oh, I don't need a board member. Like, I'm a great entrepreneur, I'm by myself, and I didn't want to give him any control. So I didn't want a board member, I didn't want anybody. I wanted to be able to run it myself. But then after a while, I didn't have a co-founder who was keeping me accountable to send out the updates. No investors cared enough to really ping me. And then so there were many times that I could have exited, could have sold the company to, for example, to any of these up-and-coming startups or one of the large institutions. But I didn't realize that at the time, and I laid the people off instead. I took, and so there's lots of points that I could have actually really changed the trajectory of the company, but I didn't have anybody who was holding me accountable. And so he shared that story with me in an effort to say, hey, look, if you have any startups, anyone raising seed funding who has in doubt of having an accountable investor, this is not to say to give up a board seat of somebody who will tell you what to do, but it's just somebody who you really trust and can go to for advice and also to hold you accountable. I think that's actually a really, really interesting piece of feedback and story that we really believe in at KV as well.
So that's a great point. I'll just add one
Go ahead.
tiny thing to that. So one of the things I find quite interesting, both as an entrepreneur and now sort of looking at things from a seed investment perspective, is how popular these convertible notes and things are right now, because it sort of sets up, it seems to be common practice. A lot of people think that, hey, let's just do a convertible real quick, get lots of people to get a convertible for up to $1 million, and then we'll worry about raising money later. That problem exactly arises there, because there's nobody, a lot of people may throw money at it, but you have no governance around the company, you have no boss effectively, which might seem like it's a really good idea initially, but it's actually for the health of the company. You don't have anybody who actually carries the burden with you. And it's actually, having been a chief exec, it really helps. Like either having a co-founder who's going to kick your ass, or having a board that's going to kick your ass.
Or a wife.
I don't know who kicks your ass, but presumably you kick your own ass, but it really does help.
So Ted, do you agree with that? Because you've done a shitload of convertible notes. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, well, I give this advice all the time, and I think the biggest mistake, I can sum it up in a kind of different way, is people look at financing the company as a trade, and that's just the wrong way to think about it. I mean, to me, it's sort of it's a relationship. And you need to set up that dynamic, that relationship dynamic, in a way that's going to be effective for both parties. And so getting, because people come in to my office and they say, well, I'm going to raise a cap note, and the cap's going to be 26, and because I have a machine learning degree, and maybe you can raise that round, but then the real question is, who's around the table who cares? Who's around the table to hold you accountable? And what kind of partnership are you really starting on? So yeah, I give this advice all the time.
Also, a lot of people won't care, whether it's a big party round or if you have a lot of advisors, they won't care unless you really bring them in. I'm an advisor for a lot of companies, I'm sure you guys are. Like half those companies, you talk to them like maybe once a year when you see them out. I always tell the companies I'm an advisor, I'm like, just have an advisor dinner once a quarter, and just where all you do is talk about your company. Like use the people who are around you, because most of the time they don't.
It's about the emotional engagement, right? Because it's even less to do with your money. It's actually about do you care about these people, right? At the end of the day. Anyway.
Awesome. Well, good. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to the finalists, and of course, all of you are going to be downstairs to hang out and talk as you're listening to Cover Flow. So we really appreciate it. And you guys are doing a great job. These are amazing people that have taken their time out tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to say one thing, because you brought up Ben's commitment to working out. And if you do find yourself having a meeting with Ben, by the way, bring your sneakers and your gym shorts, because it'll probably be at a gym. And thank you, Phil and Christian and Raj, because the night's young for them. They're going to be on stage again downstairs, and they're amazing performers, so you have to see them. And thanks, Dave, and thanks, Ted. And okay, now it's time to get your bread and butter wine.